Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll go ahead and get started in a few seconds as folks start to join us in. Thanks for joining our info session. Appreciate you being here today. Good morning, everyone. Hi, welcome. We'll let folks continue joining in as we get started. We'll start in a few seconds as folks join in. Morning, everyone. Okay. I'll go ahead and get us started as folks continue to join us in. Thank you so much for spending your morning with us. My name is Isis Lopez. I am the Engagement Manager for Development Services Department, and this is one of a series called DSD Info Series, where we have community-centered information talking about our services and talking about just information that our experts have to give. Today's session is kind of a fun one. It's called Let It Grow, parenthesis, but not too much. We'll be talking about just different plants, native plants. We'll be talking about code compliance, everything having to do with grass and lawn and weeds and nature. We have a few folks here from Development Services Department, but we also have experts from watershed protection and from Austin Water to help share helpful information. Before we get started, I want to go ahead and lay out the expectations of how this presentation is going to go about. We have a presentation from our experts, followed by a question and answer session. And then once we get to the question and answer session, you'll have two ways to participate. So you can either use the Q&A function at the bottom of Zoom. Using the Q&A function versus the chat helps us keep track of the questions that have been answered and which ones haven't been answered. So go ahead and make note of that. If you can't find it, send us a chat and we'll help troubleshoot you. And then you can also raise your hand toward the end of the presentation and voice your question, and we'll get it addressed. I will note, though, that while we hope to answer most of your questions, we might not have all the information readily available, but we'll get to as many as possible, and we might run out of time. And so we'll get to as many questions as we possibly can. And for those that we don't have the information, we will make note of them and find out more information as we can or as it becomes available. The other thing I'll note is that this presentation is being recorded. All of the information will be available along with a copy of the presentation. It'll be recorded for folks who registered, so you'll be getting that via email. The email that you used to register, you'll get a copy of that. So the topics for today's sessions are fun. We have tall grass and weeds with code compliance, and so we have Moses Rodriguez here who will start us off in a little bit. Then we have the lawn and short of it with watershed protection and Denise who will talk about just different native plants that you can use. And then we have landscape survival tools with Austin Water. And then last but not least, with Mike, we have is a permit required. So as you are thinking about your lawn and thinking about ways to make your home livable and safe, think about like whether you need a permit or not. And so we'll have all of those topics available, and then followed by a question and answer session. So our subject matter experts will stay here to answer any questions that you may have. With that, we'll go ahead and get started with Moses. If you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, we'll hand it over to you.
My name is Moses Rodriguez. I work for DSD Code Compliance Office with the Development Services. Been here in July 26 in a month. I'll be here 20 years in the same department. Next slide, please. So we're committed to the safety of Austin's people's buildings, compliance with local, state, and national. We do this review, permitting, and inspection and code compliance. I kind of tell people just imagine an HOA, but for the whole city. So Suburbs, they have an HOA, but we kind of do the compliance and we're the ones that send out the notices and notify and educate people. Next slide. What is code compliance? Development Services Department code compliance team makes sure the city code and ordinances are met so that Austin continues to be safe and livable city. So I always tell the scenario of a fire. A fire happens, a fire truck shows up, puts out the fire. What happens with that structure? Well, it is up to code and us to send out a notice in a timely manner and give them time to repair it. It can't stay. We know that there's going to be insurance costs and conversations, engineers, but somebody has to make sure that that house or that place is livable, and we'll make sure that they get permits, and DSD site will make sure they get inspected. Next slide. The city codes and ordinances regulate proper property upkeep, land use, and building conditions, just like I mentioned about that house that caught on fire. You can see, from a broken window to trash and debris, we do get some hoarding cases. Now we're thankfully about 2 years, I think we actually have on a payroll our social worker who assists us many of those scenarios where we have elderly or people dealing with hoarding, and he looks out for programs for them. Next slide. Tall weeds and grass, trash, substandard and dangerous conditions. This Wednesday, we're taking some buildings that are substandard. There's this developer that is making this big project, but meanwhile, they'll leave this abandoned building and we'll get people experiencing homeless going to these buildings and cause damage and start fires. So we take them to a building standards commission, and that's how we get the order or we get to compliance. Sometimes it's a fine of $1,000. Sometimes it's a demo order. And that's what we're hoping to get tomorrow on Wednesday. Carts on the curb, it is a violation. Infestation, we actually adopted a new ordinance in effect July 10th. In that infestation, we actually put bed bugs. We put in emphasize now bed bugs and scorpions. Stagnant water. Do y'all know? Like, I've been some classes from health. Like, just a spoon full of water can cause mosquito breeding. So we look at that when we go to properties. If they have buckets and cans and tires, we bring it to their attention. Next slide. Tall weeds. Today's topic. Yes. This is Officer Knox. I think I remember this case. It's been some years. That's overgrown. Many people will say in certain parts, well, we got to protect the sunflowers. But besides the sunflowers, there is high weeds, and this cause vermins and animals and insects. And also, it's a nuisance. What if you're the property owner next door trying to sell your $500,000 home and you have this? Who do you call? I mean, there is not an HOA for this neighborhood. You call 311, and that's how we get our calls. Next slide. Tall weeds and grass over 12 inches, considered unsanitary condition, overgrowth, can lead to rodents. I got ahead. How to call 311 and do it online service request. But that's how we get our 24. I think this year maybe will be 26,000 calls a year. We have over 50 officers that are out there and dealing with from toilets stopped up to no hot water to this storm that we just had a couple of weeks ago. We have a building right now. I think there are 50 units that have had sheetrock damage, that have had water damage. So they call us and we tell them they have to repair it. Of course, we're going to give them some timely manner and we're going to give them some extension. But at the end of the day, they will have to bring into compliance. Next slide. How we respond. Our teams responds by identifying and implementing solutions to address these conditions to ensure the minimum standard it met in the safety of the community. That's what we have. IPMC is the minimum standard across the nation. You see the before. You've seen these properties, and then this is what we get after. Many times we'll have to get a warrant to abate if it's inside the property. But when they're in the right of way, we're able to do it and just clean it, and many times put a lien on that property owner that didn't respond. Next slide. Assigning a code inspector, as I mentioned, it goes to 311, then it's for the development services, an inspector sign, and prioritize development services to respond. Initial inspection. Isis, I'm gonna do something different. Can you bring back that other slide? So that before, we're getting a lot of calls, and I don't know if y'all know, we got in a budget last year to have 3 code officers that just deal with illegal dumping. Illegal dumping has been a problem for many years. We have 1 code officer. Well, now we have 3 code officers and a supervisor that deals with illegal dumping. I just saw some video of making a person being responsible. Even though they're gonna get their day in court, they were out there with the trash bags picking up stuff that they dumped. They say they didn't, but the letters, the cards, the Medicaid cards, the all the documentation led them to that house and that person responsible. So that's your money at work. Go ahead after Hilda's slide. So this is the complaint investigation. Inspector assesses property conditions, no violations found, confirmed violation. We have to send a notice. I've seen some cities, they'll do a pretty police email, and then after the pretty police email, they'll send a notice. No, we get to where we send out the notice and we hold that person responsible. We'll do a follow-up. And then these are the different steps that we can do. If it's license registration, they can suspend it. We can take it through administrative hearing, building standards, what I was telling you about the burn house or those vacant buildings that I have, or we can go municipal court or district court. Next slide. The lawn and short, yep, that's it.
That's it. Thanks, Moses,
That's
for
it.
talking to us about the minimum standards of living. So now y'all know that 12 inches is our minimum standards for code compliance. And now we have, what can you do? What do we recommend from our experts from Watershed? And we have Denise to talk to us about that. Yeah.
Thank you, Isis. Hi, I'm Denise Delaney, and I'm the Environmental Program Coordinator with Watershed Protection, and I am the Program Coordinator for the Grow Green program. So I am going to give you some ideas about things that you can do so you can avoid that weedy, overgrown mess that was shown earlier. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, I'm with Watershed Protection. I've been with Watershed for actually 21 years, so been around a while. Our department, we are charged with protecting lives, property, and the environment. And that is from the impacts of flooding, which we know is a major issue here, and erosion caused by all the flooding, and then any kind of water pollution. So the Grow Green program is about sustainable landscaping to keep our water clean. So by not using toxic pesticides and fertilizers, we avoid polluting our water. Next slide, please. So I put this in because turf grass gets a bad rap sometimes, and there are many situations where it uses a lot of water, needs a lot of inputs. This is buffalo grass 609. I took this picture about 15 years ago, and I can't say I've been by recently, but the reason why it looks so good is because they did like 10 to 12 inches of good soil. Right. So a lot of times, you have a property and it gets built and then it's compacted and then they bring in 3 inches of not so good soil, put turf grass on top of it and expect it to do well under our conditions. So my thing is I'm not anti-turf grass, I'm pro soil. So the only way that you can improve your soil after the turf grass is down is by aerating it and composting it. And that's the rebate that Chris Charles is going to talk about a little bit later. You can get some money to help you do that. Next slide, please. But then also, I'm a big believer in if it's green and it's low growing and you can mow it, that's fine. I mean, this might not work in all homeowners associations. I know it wouldn't work where I live, but it's a, a combination of Bermuda grass that's very tough and very hardy and can be invasive, mixed with our native horse herb. Horse herb has this, I'll have another picture of it later, just cute little flower. It doesn't have any stickers on it. It comes and goes, but it fills in lots of shady spots. So this is not a bad thing to have. And especially, again, you can mow it so you won't get that overgrown code thing going. Next slide. So you've probably seen this in some areas of Austin, and while it's not, well, it's allowed, we'd really prefer that you don't put rock all over your yard. There are some issues with, you know, does the water, can the water soak through? There will be weeds in it sometime. It does contribute to the heat island effect. So while you can do this, we prefer that you take a little more natural organic approach. Next slide. So say you have a yard like this. This is kind of your classic, you know, some grass in the front, some green meatball plants planted around the front. It's okay, you know, it's not all gravel. It's got some plants in there. But what if it could look like this next slide? Oh, isn't that much nicer? You know, pollinators, it's interesting. You know, it's just a, it's what we're trying to inspire people to do is, you know, get rid of your turf grass. If you don't have pets and kids that need it, and try something like this. And the Grow Green program, I'll have the website later, has tons of resources to help you do this. Next slide, please. So something that you need to consider before you do any planting is look at your soil. And of course, it's a complex system. It's kind of like I think about if you think about looking under the ocean, like the whole world that's under the ocean that we don't see. Soil is kind of the same way. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff, ecosystem and bacteria and fungi and all kinds of things that make up healthy soil. The foundation of all your plantings. So two things that you need to look at is one, how deep is it? And what kind is it? But, you know, in Austin, we kind of have the Blackland Prairie on the east side of 35 and the hill country on the west side. And then there's like this middle zone that's kind of the urban area. So what really matters is what's in your yard. So you can look at all the maps you want, but what you really need to do is take a shovel and go outside and stick it in the ground and see what you're working with. Next slide, please. So yeah, this is hill country soil. Pretty rocky. Plants do grow in it, but it's not the easiest thing to plant in. So if you have this situation, I have a couple suggestions for you. Next slide. Yeah, this is what I was talking about with just the soil depth. You can see that Bermuda grass was planted right on top of that rock, and it's doing just fine, again, because Bermuda grass is one grass that could probably do that, but there's not very much soil there. It's really quite remarkable that it can grow there at all. That just shows you how tough it is. Next slide, please. Something other to take into consideration is call 811 before you dig. 2 days before is recommended. They'll come out and mark your utility lines. And so you can make sure that when you put a shovel in the ground, you are not hitting any of our utilities. Next slide, please. So when I was talking about the soil, I was like, work with what you have. This was actually that same yard that had the buffalo grass. And I thought this was just a really great idea. They had this rocky outcropping kind of up to the house, and they're like, well, it's going to be hard to grow any kind of grass on that. So they just put these containers out there, and it adds visual interest, and it takes up that space, and it kind of accents the grass that's in front of it. So sometimes you just have to do the best you can with what you have. Next slide. Or you have this situation, you amend what is there. That soil looks pretty, like if it was wet, it'd probably be pretty clay and yeah, not the greatest soil, but you can amend that with some compost and definitely help improve the soil structure and the drainage. And, you know, and you already have some structure there with the the bed around the tree, although I would avoid putting plants, maybe some very shallow rooted plants in there, because you don't want to disturb the tree roots there. Next slide, please. Or you can just bring in all new soil. This is one option, especially if you want raised beds. I mean, you actually have to bring it in, but raised beds can add a lot of nice architectural features. I took this down on the hike and bike trail. You know, they have the metal beds. You can have the chopped limestone or wood. It really helps add some character to your landscape. But by bringing in soil, you control what's there. So with native plants, you really don't need the high organic matter like you'd use in vegetable gardens or like for roses. Most of the contractors or the supply places have like a landscape mix, and that's probably, you just really need the basic landscape mix for these. Now you can amend it with things like crushed granite to help it too, but I mean, there's different recipes, but really the main thing is that it's well drained in a situation like this. Next slide, please. So the other thing besides the soil that you got to think about is the light. And you have to remember, this is a gradient. It's not like this plant has to have at least 6 hours or it's going to die. And there are some plants that really need to be in the shade. There's some that really need to be in the sun. And there's a whole bunch that are kind of can grow in a different range. So for instance, rock rose or pavonia, if it's out in full sun, it's going to have a lot more blooms. But if it's in a semi-shaded area, it will still grow. It will still have some blooms. It just won't have as many. So, and then sun partial shade is kind of tricky because it's partly how much sun you get, but also how much light filters through. I guess that's on the full shade. So you could have a tree that lets some light in, and that can count for shade, or you can have a tree that just has really big leaves and a dense canopy and hardly any light gets in. But there are plants that'll grow in the shade, but it's definitely more limited than the ones that grow in the sun. Next slide, please. So this is a good example. I took this in a parking lot. You can see this is big muley. The ones on the left, big, fluffy, bushy, tall, looks great. But you can see as the sunlight diminishes, so does the big muley. So the ones on the right are alive. They're doing okay, but they're not thriving. And you have to remember too that when you plant something, the environment around it changes. Like if you design your interior, say you design your living room, it's going to stay stagnant unless you change things. Where if you're out in the landscape, you're going to have things growing, and this is going to fall over and that one's going to grow over here. So just keep in mind that things do change over time, and a lot of times what we do is we just dig them up and move them somewhere else. Next slide. So plant considerations, we have lots of great plants that do well here. I do want to say we are a little conflicted because we want them to do well, but not too well. It's kind of like grow tall, but not too tall. So we always try to find that balance of plants that are tough and can grow here, but also don't take over and become invasive. So Texas is a big state. We have a lot of ecoregions. You know, we are in the middle of that number 7. You know, that's the hill country, and then the blue part gets into the Blackland Prairie and the post oak savanna. But we are mostly hill country plants. This is an urban landscape. Those are all native plants, and that is just gorgeous. And this is what we want to encourage. I do want to confess, though, this was taken about 2 days after a really great rain, because most of the time our plants don't look this pretty in full because, you know, it's dry and it's hot. And so they shut down. But once they get some rain, they just do this beautiful thing and bloom and look great. Next slide, please. And I have to throw in a note about adapted plants. You should always use native plants whenever you can. And the Wildflower Center is an excellent display of using native plants. But unfortunately, they're not always as available as we would like them to be. And we're always trying to figure out ways to get more of them into the industry. But in the meantime, there are lots of plants that do just fine. Don't feel bad if you want to grow some daylilies, or you want, to have some bedding plants or some penta. Um, you shouldn't feel bad about that. It's like bad plant, good plant. I mean, just the ones that we don't want are the ones that are invasive, the ones that come in and take over, like privets and nandina, and they just choke out all the good stuff. So we've got the prefer the native, accept the adapted, no way on the invasive. But the invasive list in our plant guide, we do have a list in the back. The state of Texas, we can't ban any plants, but we can just recommend that you don't plant the ones on the invasive list. Next slide, please. So I just threw in a couple slides here. These are kind of lower growing plants that do well. And the reason I chose these two particular slides is because that's Damianita. You may have seen it growing out of a limestone cliff. Plants just blow me away that they can do that. But the one on the right, I actually planted that at the Wildflower Center up by the main entrance, and it's planted in caliche, right? It's planted in basically the same stuff that limestone wall is made out of. If you plant something like this in, soil that has a lot of organic matter, it's going to grow too much. It's going to flop over. It's not going to look right. It's overkill for a plant that doesn't need that kind of situation. So growers, if I don't know how many native plants you've taken, but sometimes you take them out of the pot and it's a bunch of bark and stuff. Ideally, they would be growing those plants in caliche, but of course, a 1 gallon plant full of limestone rock is not going to be practical when they have to move things around or ship it. So just where it ends up is what matters. Next slide, please. So just to remind you about some alternatives that you can do to turf grass. One is ground covers. You can put in new planting beds. You can put in rain gardens. You can put in a pond. You can grow edible plants. You can just mulch an area or expand a mulch area around the base of trees. Excuse me, you can put in sitting areas and decks. Using boulders, I have a picture of that, little scenes that they take up space that's not turf grass. And then of course, pathways and pervious pavement are other options. So I'm just gonna go through a few of these with you. The next slide. So ground covers, of course, are gonna be low. They can spread somehow. They're really nice because they kind of tie things visually together. If you have ground covers in this bed and in this bed, and then visually you look at them and you're like, oh, that all fits together. They help with erosion control because, again, a lot of these spread. And so when they spread out, they take root as they spread. And so that helps with erosion control. They're great to fill in bare spots. They reduce your need for mowing. Some of them you can mow. Some of it's better if you don't. And then there are a number of them that do well in the shade. So next slide. So clover fern is one that it needs a little bit more water. I mean, I would say medium use water, but it's really low growing. It's clover. It looks pretty and it spreads. It's a great plant. Next one. Oh, Greg Dahlia. I just love these. I'm trying to see. The picture in the upper right, like when those were originally planted, that was probably 7 to 9 1 gallon plants. And then they filled out and spread and covered that whole space. It's just beautiful gray color, really fine texture, super tough. Highly recommended. Looks great with purple flowers too. And frog fruit is a little native plant. I don't know why they call it frog fruit, but it's low growing. It's not evergreen. It'll come and go when it's cold and with the amount of moisture it gets, but it just comes back naturally when the conditions are right. So that's a really good one for more ground cover. Next slide, please. And this is that same picture that I showed you earlier with the mixture of the Bermuda grass and the horse herb. And that's the little teeny yellow flower on the horse herb, just sweet as can be, super easy. Doesn't need a lot of water, doesn't need any fertilizer, and we'll just be happy to keep growing as long as the conditions allow it. Next slide, please. Leadwort plumbago, this one isn't as known as the other ones, but it's, we have the plumbago that's kind of shrubby and has the big light blue flowers. This is not that. This is a low growing ground cover with sometimes those flowers are even darker purplish blue, really pretty. It's not as aggressive as some of the other ground covers, but it will take some shade. So it's a nice one to use to fill in around some other bigger plants. Next slide, please. And Lyre sage, this one, I really like it. Most of the time it looks like that on the left. It just kind of looks like lettuce, and it has some purple veins that kind of give it some color. And then when it blooms, it puts up this, pretty purple flower, but it spreads pretty easily. It does need a medium water use, but something that's a native that's just a little bit different that you might want to give a try. Next slide. Oh, Liriope. This is an old classic. You see this everywhere, all over the country, old-fashioned gardens, but there's a reason. It's just a really nice, clumpy, grassy ground cover that you can plant a bunch of and cover in a big area. You do not want to be mowing this. This only puts on growth one time a year in the late winter, early spring. So if you are going to cut it back, you want to do it in late winter before that new growth comes on. We had this in our demonstration garden, and somebody well-intentioned came and weed eated the top of it not too long ago. And now it just looks tattered and beat up, and it's going to be that way until next spring. So make sure you know your growth habits of your plants. Next slide, please. Monkey grass is similar. It's a little bit smaller leaf, but that's just a ton of them all planted under a tree. And there you go. You don't have to do anything to that, really. You don't even have to mow it. So it's very low maintenance. Next slide, please. Silver ponyfoot, here's another one that's native. It's kind of like that Greg Dahlia, but this one stays a lot flatter. I took that picture in Travis Heights. You can see how well it's spreading, almost too much. And you need to plan, when you plant them, you want to set them back from the wall because you know it's going to grow, but then at the same time, it might require a little maintenance to every once in a while come back and trim that so it looks a little bit neater. But I don't think that's a code violation. And then mountain pea, oh, spelled that wrong. Mountain pea is just another nice little ground cover. It kind of takes the place of what am I thinking of? The ground cover, the jasmine, Asian jasmine. It's not quite as aggressive, but it's green and it's fluffy. It has little purple flowers on it that aren't super showy. The one on the left, those are actually little bulbs that are coming up in that. That is not the flower of the mountain pea. Next slide, please. And then sedges. Sedges are awesome. Again, it's a clumpy, grassy looking thing. That one on the right, I took that at the airport. I just think that's beautiful. It doesn't have to have big showy flowers on everything to look nice. It's got a fine texture and the wind blows it. It keeps the weeds out. Really, really good choice for ground cover. Next slide, please. Another gray one. We have a lot of gray plants because they actually, that helps keep them cooler than the green plants. So that's one reason why and the fuzz on them helps reduce the amount of evapotranspiration that happens. But again, this was planted around the entry to this property. I would say that area probably, well, I'm not going to guess, but I was going to try to guess like how many 1 gallons you would plant originally, and then they would all fill in together. But yeah, I'm not going to guess on that one. Next slide, please. And then purple coneflower isn't one that you would normally think of as a ground cover. It's more of a perennial, but it is those on the left that we call that a basal rosette. So it spends quite a bit of its time of its life in that. So it kind of looks like a ground cover, but then when it starts to bloom, you get this showy purple coneflower that's butterflies love, and it's really pretty. So just there are lots of perennials that do that. So I just wanted to give you an example of one of those. Next slide, please. And then mulch. You can always put mulch out. Organic mulch, cedar mulch, shredded hardwood mulch. It's going to break down and add some organic matter to the soil. It's going to help keep the soil moisture in. It's helping keep the weeds down. It's just a good all-around practice. And I think in the landscape survival tools, you can get a rebate on the mulch too, but we'll let Chris address that in a few minutes. Next slide. And then of course, rain gardens and watershed protection, we're all about slowing down water and catching it and letting it soak into the ground so it's not running down into the storm drain. So rain gardens are really it's just a depressed garden. And so water is only supposed to catch water and not hold it for more than 2 days. So originally rain gardens like, oh, it's a pond. It's like, no, it's not a pond. It just slows down the water, lets it sink into the ground. And like I said, instead of washing into, down the driveway and into the storm drain, which leads to our creeks, you keep more of it on your property and it helps the plants. And they can be really pretty. But again, like the other garden that I showed you with the native plants, a lot of the time it's just going to look dry and it's just going to look kind of rough because that's our situation. But then after we get a rain or it gets a decent drink, then they usually recover and look really good. But it's not going to look like that all the time. So we have to be realistic. Next slide, please. Oh, that's the end. So yes, please check out growgreen.org. We have all kinds of great resources there. We have displays in most of the nurseries around Austin. We also have displays with our materials at some of the city rec centers and libraries. And then the next slide will have my contact information. If you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer those. I thank you for your time, and I hope you picked up some ideas of what you can do instead of having a weedy tall mess in your yard.
Thanks so much, Denise, for this information. And you gave the perfect segue for our next section. So we have folks here from Austin Water. We have Christopher Charles. What do you have to talk to us about today, Christopher?
Oh, I'm sort of following suit with the topic today of maintenance. One thing I was just noticing between Moses and Denise's presentations is that there's a little bit of a fine line between a natural landscape and an overgrown landscape. And I'm going to be talking a little bit about this program that we have. But I wanted to add just one comment, and that was a lot of people that go into our rebate programs here at Austin Water will do some kind of edging for these plants that maybe will get over a foot in height, so that people are aware that that's a certain bed for maybe wildflowers or certain perennials that are going to get kind of bushy and leggy. That's just the way that they grow. But if you edge either with stone, steel, or plastic, that sort of tells not only your neighbors but code compliance that, oh, this is supposed to be an area where this plant is going to grow and not get unruly and go across the yard and stuff like that. But that's just my comment on what I've been noticing so far. I'm here to talk about our one, Austin Water. Austin Water has been keeping your water safe and reliable for many years, and we pride ourselves on the fact that we can go out there and fix leaks and repair as soon as possible through natural disasters and the like. But next slide. We do pride ourselves on our rebate programs in water conservation. This one we've had for a long time now. It's called the Landscape Survival Tools Rebate. This is a program that will help save you water just by doing maintenance. And I know that this is going to be a lot of what Denise just talked about, but she sort of showed you applications. I'm going to just tell you the reasons why we're rebating these items. So the first one is compost. Compost, and you can see in that middle picture there, a lot of people will use compost to top dress their lawns. Why do they do this? Well, because compost acts like a sponge and it not only gives nutrients to the grass roots, but it also soaks in the water so that you're not having to water as much. If you have an automatic irrigation system, you might want to lower the times. Let's say you have it on a zone for 10 minutes. Why? After you do the compost, you might want to knock it down to maybe 8 minutes. And over the long, summer that we have, that might save you hundreds of gallons of water, or even thousands of gallons of water, depending on how big your zones are. So that's one thing that we do. As far as the minimum amount that we would like for you to purchase is 2 cubic yards, not 2 cubic feet. If you do the math, it's 54 cubic feet. The reason why I sort of put that out there is because a lot of people will want to buy in bags at their home improvement stores. But if you go to the landscape supply companies out there, you can get them to deliver per yard, which ends up being, well, I don't want to say cheaper, but it ends up being a little bit easier just because you can apply it a little bit easier than having to open up bags and sort of spread it. We can give you $50 for 2 cubic yards of compost. The next item is mulch. The same thing. We want you to get at least 2 cubic yards. And you can see somebody loading up mulch in the back of their red pickup there in the picture on the right. They do allow that at the landscape supply stores. But if most people I see will go to the home improvement stores because they sell them in 2 cubic foot bags. So you just get 27 of those 2 cubic foot bags and put them in your plant beds. With this, how mulch helps many, many, many ways, and Denise talked about some already, but the way that we see it is that if you put the mulch in your plant beds, you're not only allowing the mulch to absorb water for the plant roots, you're also protecting the roots. Not only in the summer. Of course, it's going to protect it in the summer from the harsh sun. It's going to stop the heat from getting down into the root zone, but it's also going to protect those roots during a freeze. So you're not having to try to nurse back, I guess, damaged plants in the springtime. So we've noticed that mulch is a really good way to conserve water. And 2 cubic yards might be a lot for some people, but but I usually tell them that once you fill up all your plant beds in your front and backyard, you can start putting that mulch around your trees, not up against the trees. You never want the mulch to touch the trunk, but around the base of the tree. That will allow water to stay in that root zone and benefit mature mature trees and smaller trees as well. I've seen both, but a lot of people that are concerned more about their trees that they've invested a lot of time and energy on. Yeah, I would definitely use any type of mulch to protect those trees that are. I'm trying to forget. I sort of forgot the name, but mature trees. But I think there's some that are heritage. Some have labels because they've sort of grown a certain size. Everybody wants to protect our big trees here in Austin. We can give you $40 for that mulch rebate. And then aeration service. And then that's the picture on the left over there is a guy that's rented out a machine from a home improvement store, or he hired a contractor to do this work for him. What that does is for people that have lawns that have a heavy thatch layer, this sort of puts scoops out a plug of thatch and soil and spits it out up above ground so that you have holes within your lawn. Now these holes allow water and air to get into the grass root zones and allow them to get thicker, fuller, and even longer in some cases, so that you're not and so they're able to absorb water better than not doing that service. And if you combine it with compost, you're actually adding nutrients into those holes that you've created with the machine. We've seen that just on our participants, because we always do we always look at the water use from our participants, that people that sort of do this combination of aeration and compost are starting to save money because they're not putting on their they're not having to water as much and use city water to keep their grass alive. Um, and so that's a big benefit for us. And for maintenance reasons, it's going to be it's going to help out with your investment of lawn, because it does take a lot to not only cut the lawn, fertilize it, but water it. So it's going to cut down on that watering. That rebate is $30. And the next slide, please. I'm going to just go over how it works, the rebate itself. You go to our website, which is waterwiseaustin.org. I'm not sure if I can put that into the chat or not, but waterwiseaustin.org will get you to our rebate page. What you would do, you could go ahead and get the work done before you turn in the application, but you can only go into the program every 3 years. So if you have not entered this program, you're free to enter it right now, tomorrow, if you want. But if you have already done this program, you would have to wait 3 years before you are able to apply again. So you'll go ahead and get the mulch, like in this picture. You'll let's going to go over the mulch example. You will go ahead, buy the mulch, install it on your property, keep the receipts, and then take photos. You don't need to take a before photo. Don't worry about the before photo. All I want to see is if you've put 2 cubic yards on your property. You will turn in the application, the photos, and the receipt within 90 days of when you installed it. And what you will do is you'll wait about 6 to 8 weeks for your paper check to get mailed to your address. Of course, you do need to be a City of Austin water user, or a water or have a water provider that buys water from us. And we have a list on our website on those. Basically, it's cities around town like um, um, Sunset Valley, up north would be uh, like Wells Branch, and there's some out west. I think it's Travis County number 10 or number 1. But there's a list on there that you'd be eligible for our rebates as well. So I think that is all I had. Any more questions, please put them in the Q&A. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. And yeah, we can share, if you want to share the website in the chat, I think we can do that. If not, we can send it to participants as well.
Excellent. Thank you.
All right. And now we have Mike. Mike?
Yes, thank you. Good morning. My name is Mike McDougall. I'm the Environmental Policy Program Manager in LUR and the Development Services Department. And so all this brings up a question, of course, is a development permit required? Next slide, please.
Mike, your audio sounds a little bit crispy, and I'm not sure. Let's see. Okay, there you go. Yeah, I was getting some static.
Okay, is that any better?
I still hear it. If it's just me, then if a participant can kind of hear it, there you go.
Okay, I'll keep talking. Is that any? I'm using the same microphone I've always used on the laptop. So
it might just be on my end. So thanks for your patience, folks, as we get these technical difficulties. I'm hearing a lot of static, but maybe it'll go away. Hopefully it'll go away. I hear it a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't. I could disconnect or reconnect if you thought that might help. But all right, keep going. Whatever.
Yeah, I'm hearing it too. It's like, yeah, it's very distracting.
Yeah, thanks for your patience, folks. Mike, do you have any microphones that you can use?
I do not, unfortunately. I've always just used the laptop microphone. So I'm on the same system.
If you want to go ahead and hop off and on and back on, we'll
I'll do that. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. Meanwhile, though, while Mike is hopping on, Victor, do you want to talk a little bit about the permitting side of development?
Sure, I absolutely can. Hey, everyone. My name is Victor Azin, and I'm a division manager with our Land Development Information Services team. What we do is we provide assistance to the public with general questions about development. It looks like we've got Mike back, so I'm going to let him continue with his presentation, but I'll be available after his to answer any development related questions that are outside of his area of expertise.
Yeah, thanks for your patience, folks. Go ahead and speak, Mike. Let's see if
Awesome.
that's
Okay, thank you. Is this any better?
better. Much
Okay,
better.
great.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Take it away,
Okay,
Mike.
strange. All right, so yeah, is a development permit required? My name is Mike McDougall, Environmental Policy Program Manager in DSD. Next slide, please. So, is a development permit required? Well, yes, if the work constitutes development. Next slide. And so that brings us to the question of, well, what is development? And that's not always easy to answer. So when in doubt, read the Land Development Code. But sometimes that helps. Sometimes it just creates additional confusion. But here we go. Next slide. So per LDC 25-1-2130, development means the construction or reconstruction of a building or road, or, next slide, the placement of a structure on land, or, next slide, the excavation, mining, dredging, grading, or filling of land, or the removal of vegetation from land, or the deposit of refuse or waste on land. Next slide. And so what is not development? Well, the same section of the code tells us what is not development. Development does not include lawn and yard care, including mowing, gardening, tree care, and maintenance of landscaped areas, or I think that's a repeat. Next slide, please. Removal of trees or vegetation damaged by natural forces, or removal of vegetation or cultivation of the soil for ag operations unless prohibited by subsection 25.8.321B, clearing of vegetation. What that basically says is that if you're a farmer or rancher, you're using your land for ag use, you don't need a permit. And the clearing of vegetation section just basically says, well, it wouldn't be allowed to suddenly convert your land to agricultural use, clear it, and then submit a permit. So it basically says it's kind of legitimate ag use, and you can't clear it off and then submit a permit or something like that. But basically, this section says ag use is not development. Next slide. The repair, maintenance, or installation of utility, drainage, or street system that does not disturb land or increase impervious cover. Next slide. But these activities might still require a site plan permit or a site plan exemption permit from the city of Austin, depending on the nature of the repair. So typically maintenance and repair don't need a permit, but some things might. It can be very confusing sometimes. Next slide. And so that brings us to, is a development permit required? Well, yes, no, or maybe, which is probably about as clear as mud. So let's try and clear that up a little bit. Next slide. So one example, this slide, removal of vegetation and grading are occurring, and this is clearly development, and a permit would be required. Large-scale operation going on here. Next slide. And another one, removal of vegetation, grading, and excavation are occurring, and this is clearly development, and a permit is required. So this is a utility installation, definitely development, and a permit would be required. Next slide. And removal of vegetation, grading, and construction of a building are occurring in this slide. And so this is clearly development, and a permit would be required. So, big, tall buildings being constructed needs a permit. Next slide. And removal of vegetation and placement of waste are occurring in this situation. And this is clearly development, and a permit would be required. So these are all examples when it's obvious a permit would be required. They're large scale operations. It's pretty evident that yes, that is development. Next slide. So what does not require development? Well, cutting grass. No one gets a permit to cut their grass. That would be kind of silly to have to get a permit to mow your lawn. So specifically, this is not development, does not require a permit. Next slide. And this is more of a maybe category. The construction of this retaining wall and fill might meet the definition of development, and a permit could be required. Next slide. And the placement of a structure on land meets the definition of development, and a permit could be required. So even a small storage shed, maybe, and we'll go into a little more detail on these maybes in a second. Next slide. A treehouse. I've never seen a permit required for a treehouse, a basic treehouse. That would be that just seems like that would be overreach. Next slide. But let's get to an answer more definite than maybe. So what are some considerations if something is maybe development? Next slide. So scale is one consideration. So placing a small shed in a backyard or over existing impervious cover probably won't need a permit. Building a small treehouse is unlikely to require a permit as well. So these are small. So I mean, I guess technically they meet the definition of development, but they're so small, they just are unlikely to need a permit. Next slide. So we want to think about scale. So in the image on the left, that tremendous retaining wall with a lot of fill, that would certainly require a permit. Where the small retaining wall with some paver stones and some soil and some plants, that's so small, it's unlikely a permit would be necessary for something that small in someone's front yard. Next slide, please. And speaking of tree houses, this tree house almost certainly would require a permit. It's huge, it's lovely, but huge. So if somebody were to build this in their backyard, they would probably need to get a permit first. Next slide. So another thing to consider to get us to a better answer than maybe is the existing conditions and the location of development. That is, existing conditions and location of development are an additional consideration. Next slide. So even small projects require a permit in sensitive areas such as waterway setbacks, floodplains, or critical environmental feature setbacks. So in a grow zone where there's, say, no mowing happening because we want the vegetation to return the riparian vegetation, even something small would disrupt that vegetation, and that would probably require a permit. Next slide. So for example, a small amount of dirt placed in a front yard might not be development, but the same amount of fill placed near a waterway could destroy the wetlands or cause flooding. And so what's okay in one location, a small amount of soil added, might require a permit somewhere else in a sensitive area. Next slide. And so another consideration are tree roots. So tree critical root zones must be protected. And so placing a small amount of fill over the critical root zone might constitute development due to the impact to the tree. And that would likely require a permit as well. So you fill in a low spot in your front yard, no big deal. Put that same amount of soil over the tree root zones, and that might actually kill the tree. And on single family property, trees 19 inches and greater are regulated by the city. Next slide, please. And so another consideration is parking. So parking vehicles on undeveloped land constitutes development and would require a permit. And so, all these vehicles are compacting the soil that soil technically becomes impervious cover by city criteria, and the vegetation is being removed by all those cars parking in the field. So parking cars on raw land does constitute development and would require a permit. Next slide. In contrast, parking on an existing lot is not development. So while the construction of this parking lot would have required a permit, actually using this parking lot does not require a permit. And so in that last slide, they're parking cars. In this slide, they're parking cars. But the difference is one's on a field and one's on a parking lot. And so the existing conditions are important, even for the exact same work. So parking vehicles on an existing lot does not constitute development, does not require a permit. But of course, to build the parking lot would have required a permit. Next slide. And so final thoughts, is a permit required? Well, something small might not be development, but scaled up, the same work might be development. And what might not be development in one location could indeed be development in another location due to existing conditions, the environmental sensitivity, and the environmental impact. Next slide. And so when in doubt, I recommend calling LDIS EV review, and LDIS might need to confer with EV inspections to ensure consensus. And just one example, I had an attorney call up who's a landowner wanted to do some clearing of land. And his perspective, the attorney's perspective was that it was not development, the city's perspective that it was development. And the attorney said, you know what, I'll just file for a permit anyway, because I'd rather get the permit now than deal with getting red tagged later. He didn't think it was development, but the path of least resistance was actually just to go ahead and apply for the permit. So that's also a consideration, even if an individual doesn't think it's development, but the city says it is, might be best just to go ahead and get the permit, just because that's the simplest and cheapest and quickest path forward. And with that, I will turn it back to Isis. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Mike, and thanks everyone who we got through that technical difficulty. So we had a lot of information. We had great information from our subject matter experts. You learned about code compliance. What does our property maintenance code have to say about the maintenance of our lawns? What is the minimum standards that our code compliance team receives when they get a call from 311, and how to make that call? But also we brought some solutions on what to do, on alternatives and options from Denise with watershed protection, and then some helpful programs from Chris from Us and Water. And then if you want to make some improvements to your home and to your space, it would require a permit. So I appreciate all of our subject matter experts. And now we're ready to answer some questions. So if our panelists can please turn on their cameras, we'll be ready to answer the questions. And so we have a question here, and as we are going along, I'll put in our two surveys too before we get to the questions. I'll leave these on the screen. Make sure to take a moment to let us know how we did. If you can go ahead and scan that, it'll take you to a survey. It helps us make our information, and it helps us make our content better. Let us know what you liked, what you didn't like, what we can improve. And then we'll be announcing our July session soon, so make sure to stay tuned. We post them on, we have at least a monthly one. We post them on publicinput.com/DSD info series. We have a lot of great information to share with y'all. All right, so there are two ways that you can participate. We have a few questions in the queue, so you can go ahead and write them out in the Q&A portion, or otherwise you feel free to also raise your hand, and we will get to those questions. I will also note that Christopher shared on the chat the Awesome Water Rebates program, so the link is shared there. And then a common question that we get, I mentioned it at the beginning, but for folks who came in late, we are also recording this session, so you folks who registered will get a chance to get a copy of this recording along with a copy of the presentation. All right, so we have our subject matter experts and our staff members have already answered a few of the questions. We had a question for code compliance on how to report illegal dumping, and so Moses went ahead and shared. He stepped away, and I'm not sure if he's back, and so he'll be back as he had to step away for a matter. But if we have more code compliance questions that we aren't able to answer, we'll go ahead and try to get those noted. So one of the questions was how to report illegal dumping. So he went ahead and noted that the 311 is a good source. And you can do that over the phone or through the mobile app. And then we had some questions on maintenance requirements for rain garden, and questions about the Grow Green Guide. And we do have one question, and I think it's kind of the question asks, do tall grassy areas not attract mosquitoes and chiggers and potentially a fire hazard? And I feel like this one's mostly for code compliance, but I feel like it is the essence of our presentation, in sort of speak in a question. And so one of the goals for our presentation was to talk about those property maintenance codes and talk about what are some of the rules and minimum standards that we have for property maintenance in order to keep our neighborhood safe, in order to be a good neighbor and make sure that we control for those fire hazards and for those pests. Nobody wants to keep mosquitoes. I mean, I don't know if someone out there wants to keep mosquitoes out there. But then also, what are some solutions in terms of what can we do to maintain our yard, and what can we do to keep our environment safe too, as well. And so I don't know if any of our panelists have anything else to add to that question, but it was such a great question because it really nails on the essence of why we made and why we had not only code compliance, but also some of our partner departments to talk about how we're all working together for different goals, but try to maintain that balance. All right. I'll give it a moment to see if anybody else has any more questions. All right, we have a question here from one of our attendees. How long does it take for water use to appear on My ATX Water? Chris, do you know that answer?
As far as what I was told for My ATX Water, it takes 24 hours. So that might be just like one business day for it to appear. That's good because if you have a leak, you're not waiting a whole month to try to see that on your bill. You'll get a notification right away on that. So, but some people just like keeping track of their water use, and it takes about a day for it to come on.
Okay, thanks, Chris. And thanks to our attendee for that question. And it looks like Moses is back. Moses, we had a question that we thought was more toward code compliance. We had
Which one?
I'll
reading
read it.
them.
I'll read it for you. Do the tall grassy areas not attract mosquitoes and chiggers and potentially a fire hazard? And what I described was that was the gist and the essence of this presentation of striking a balance between property maintenance and then maintaining your lawn and using plants that are good and healthy and recommended by our watershed protection department. Is there anything else that you wanted to add to that question and comment?
I mean, I don't know how many people know that they just adopted the WUI WUI code.
Wildland Urban Interface Code. We don't have folks here from Austin Fire, but we do work with them. Yes.
But that is a big factor in construction. And I just heard of a property owner that has to deal with the way he's building his patio, and he's being dinged for it. So that is already in place. The grass, being maintained, that's why we say 12 inches and under has to be, but there's already the development side that deals with potential fire hazards. The mosquito breeding, many times we will, if we find anytime there's a swimming pool, if it's residential, we deal with it. If it's green, and it's not being maintained. I just got a call yesterday, one of my officers, and we gave them 30 days to bring it up to repairs. But they can make it a pond if they decide to. There is that other factor. I've had one person make it a pond, but there's already these codes in line to prevent those fire hazards. I saw it, but I thought more of I thought it was more for them. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. Thank you for your perspective, Moses. Go ahead, Denise.
I've got to get my thing. I just wanted to add about the Firewise thing. Yeah, the wildfire division has been working on their new code, and they've also come up with plants that they're recommending, like they're saying they don't want anything from 5 feet from the house, but then there's some plants you can plant there, and then they've got another list of further out because you're doing it in zones. And also, just besides the plants, lots of things like covering your vents so that the embers can't get sucked in there, and making sure you don't have a corner where there's a bunch of grass or leaves that have collected. So I think I don't know if the WUI code's been if it's been implemented yet, but I know that they're working on that plant list, and we reviewed it, and we'll have some kind of reference in the next version of the plant guide. And then also with mosquitoes, yeah, they live in the grass, but they reproduce in that standing water, like Moses was saying, like it can be a tablespoon. But I believe that if you have a serious problem on your property, I believe that Austin Public Health will send someone out to come and do a scope of your property to help you identify where that standing water might be.
Yeah. And yeah, those codes, I can share, we have a few educational materials for when those technical codes go into effect, and they go into effect July 10th. And so I can share those out with folks who registered. If they want to learn more about what those requirements look like from Austin Fire themselves, they went ahead and had that part of the presentation as well for the wildlife urban interface. And one of the other questions, I will remind folks that this webinar was recorded, and so a recording will be shared with folks who registered. So not only attendees, but there were some folks who registered but couldn't quite make it, along with a PDF copy of the presentation. All right, and with that,
I go back to that one about the fire?
Yeah.
It's been in place. So we just adopted the 24, but the 21, they already had it. They just made it a little bit more stronger. And it's been in place, so it's already been looked at. And yes, there's a lot of questions from developers all the time, because it is a cost. It's increased the cost, but at the end of the day, they're just trying to save properties and save lives.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate everybody tuning in. Join us at our next session. We'll be posting up a July session on publicinput.com/DSD info series. I appreciate all of our staff members who helped have such helpful information about what our property maintenance standards are, what types of plants to plant as a solution, and then some tools and programs that we have in the city of Austin, along with answers about what what is required in permitting as you are making your home beautiful, safe, livable, and great for the environment. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a good rest of your day, and we'll see you at the next one.